My name's Sasha Pete, and I'm super excited to be speaking with one of the greatest Socceroos ever to put on a jersey. He's my right back, 100%. He's got the job. Mr. Alan Davidson, welcome.
Thank you, Sash. How are you?
Mate, I'm popping out of my skin. You're a Melbourne boy. Tell us about how you fell in love with our great game.
Oh, gee, that's going back a long time, you know. I guess it started, it probably started by default in some ways, because back when I was growing up, it was, pretty much after the war, my mother and father. My mother was Japanese and my father was Australian. So, I didn't realise until I went to school, my mum, and she always taught us, to be proud that, we got Japanese blood and all that sort of stuff. And she sort of brainwashed us in a lot of ways, because she'd already experienced it. And coming to Australia, she was treated like a second-class citizen in some ways, because she was the enemy, and it was sad. And but anyway, she brainwashed us to be proud Japanese, and you got Japanese blood, and we had a samurai family and all that sort of stuff. And when we went to school, we thought we were going to be treated like royalty, but we realised very quickly that we were the enemy. You know what I mean? And we didn't have too many. My brother and I, we didn't have too many Australian friends. Most of our, we were pretty much sort of loners. You know what I mean? And we were bullied alike, we were in fights every day, or mostly every day, you know what I mean? People picking on us, so it toughened us up at the start, right from the very start, you know what I mean? And what happened was the Greek community was friendly to me. Yep. And I basically, they won me over, and I started wanting to be friends with the Greeks, and they were my friends. And yeah, that's how it started. But the thing was, they played soccer. Yep. And, I grew up going to school and playing, Aussie rules and cricket and that sort of stuff. But when I went over, and all the Greek guys who were my friends, I got, I was the captain of the actual school team at Aussie Rules, but I left the Aussie Rule team to play football, which was soccer then. And the first year I remember that I was on the bench the whole year. I never played a game, you know what I mean, because I was the worst player. And I didn't realise it was such a different game to me. I never was used to it. I think I was a pretty good athlete, a sportsman in that regard, but I just didn't have the quality and understanding of the game, the touch, all that sort of stuff, and it took me a year. I was friendly to all the guys and that, but I was the worst player. So, and what happened was I used to go on the weekends and knock on the doors to see if they played. We lived around this circle in Altona East where I grew up. And knock on the doors, but no one would play with me. No one would come out and play with me because I was bad. So I ended up getting my own football, and then predominantly my best friend in development was a brick wall. You know what I mean? It was I came across it because I wanted to become a better player, and there was a kindergarten that had a brick wall and with grass and all that around it, and I just went and played against the brick wall, and I didn't realise, I just kicked it because no one would play with me. I'd kick it against the wall, and the ball would come back, and I'd play for hours, and that's that was my I think that was the beginning of me developing as a player, as a soccer player, because I didn't realise what was happening. I wasn't aware. I was, a 10-year-old kid just kicking the ball against the wall every day because no one would play. But I was used to being a loner and being on my own. But I didn't know I was developing technique and touch, and you know, weight of pass and weight of, you know, I could start to get the feel of the ball, you know, and I didn't know all these things in the ball, and I'd just kick it and it'd come back, and I'd kick it and come back, and then I'd try to have targets, and I'd try to hit targets and all that sort of stuff. And eventually, you know, doing that for a year on my own, you know, the next year I became the best player.
That's fantastic. It's amazing because the wall's unforgiving. You give a pass and it bounces at a wrong angle.
Well, yeah, it was great because for me, the ball was coming back to me. At least I could do something, and you know, I could learn to get the control of the ball and understand, you know, and then I'd start to work with both feet, kicking, and you know, when I started kicking against the wall, then I realised how bad my touch was, or how bad my passing was. So, and the wall became my best friend, and also became a real, you know, helped me develop a lot of things that I wasn't aware of. And as I, you know, became older, I realised that, you know, the wall for me was the best friend. And then, you know, when I started coaching young kids and all that sort of stuff, I introduced training in their backyards against the wall, you know what I mean? And then what we did was we structured it in a way that we monitored progress with time. You know what I mean? So we did all these drills and all that sort of stuff, and they had a stopwatch, and they did these drills, and they were working with technique and touch, where a lot of times, if you look at clubs now, they do a lot of drills and all that sort of stuff. That can all be done at home, and if you monitor it, and, you know, if you monitor it with a stopwatch, then you can start taking stats about how quick and how, because, you know, speed is another thing that comes into football as you get up as you climb the ranks. So that's one of the things that I developed with training kids was, you know, when they came to training, we did functional things where everyone was involved, as opposed to drills and drills where they had to work on technique and touch. That was done at all at home, you know. So
yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Your first junior club, was that in Altona? Altona, was it City?
I went to Altona East State School, and my first junior club was West Newport Soccer Club. You know, it was a Polish club. They were aligned with Polonia back in the early 70s. You know what I mean? And then I played there 1 year. All the Greek guys went there, and then they didn't like it. And then they all went to Altona, and then I went there and I played when I was in grade 5. It was composites, so we had grade 5 and 6 together. So I was mixing with older Greek kids, you know what I mean, and Greek kids that are my age as well, and I was playing. And then when I went, I played with all these guys all the time, everywhere. So when I went to Altona, they wouldn't let me play a year above myself, you know what I mean. So anyway, this coach, Ian Hines, who was a big name in Altona City, he was the captain of the senior team. He said, no, you can't. You have to go play in your own age group. And I said, listen, I didn't know these guys. I've known these guys all my life. These are my only friends. I've got no other friends, you know. Yep. So he said, oh, well, and then he let me train and play. And then he said, okay, you can stay, you know, after a couple of training sessions. So, yeah.
And you made your senior debut at like 16.
Yeah. So, yeah. So,
yeah. So,
so I started training with I played my first senior game at 16 with the seniors. Yeah, it's a long time ago. So, yeah, I actually read that somewhere in a thing, and I thought, geez, I remember it, but I just, you know, you forget. They're all memories, and sort of you just reminisce, and you think, yeah, that's right. I played against Preston. My first game was against Preston at 16. Yeah,
fantastic. So, and before too long, I know you've done full circle at Altona. You've gone back there again. So I know the guys there really love you. But then South Melbourne came knocking, and you spent many seasons there. How was your time at South?
South were great to me too. You know, like I had played with the Altona senior team, but I was also in the Australian youth team as well, you know. But guys like Eddie Krenchevich were playing in I was very close with Eddie Krenčević back in the day. You know, we grew up together and we played with each other. But he jumped first and he went into the Premier League. Or back then it was the old State League. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then he went into from the State League. He jumped in and then he went to a NSL club. And then the following year, I went to South Melbourne. In into 78, 79, you know, so I was 18, I just turned 18, I think, you know what I mean, and I went to South Melbourne, and I went to we went away with the national youth team, so it was the first national youth team ever picked as well, so we had to go to Paraguay to play. We did our Oceania, we won our group, and then we went to Paraguay to qualify against Paraguay or Israel, Paraguay and ourselves to get to the World Cup, which was in Japan. Mm-hmm. So, and that's Maradona's age group. So that was a big thing we wanted to go. But we played, you know, anyway, we went to South America and we lost against Paraguay in Paraguay. But it was a great experience with that youth team as well, because a lot of those youth team players, you know, all went on, you know, and you know, Theo Salamides was in the team, you know, Eddie Krenčević, George Christopoulos, you know, Jeff Olver, you know, they all. So there was a lot of players from that young youth team that played for Australia as well, you know, yes. Stephen Hogg and, you know, yeah, a lot of guys. So, and Rudy Guttendorf was the national coach and he was the actual youth team coach too. So he gave us the opportunity. I played my first game for the Socceroos when I was 19. So, you know, it was a great opportunity to be in the youth team, then going to South Melbourne. Then after the youth team commitments with the young Socceroos, I wanted to go play in the NSL. So I was knocking on doors. I first went to JUST and because they had a coach and they had a philosophy of giving youngsters a go. And yep. I liked the mentality of the Yugoslavs, you know, because I thought the Yugoslav footballers were very yep. similar to the Brazilian type yep. of players of Europe, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And they gave youngsters a go and they pretty much said to me, "Oh, listen, don't ring up. You know, we'll ring you back when we're ready. But then we'll ring you and we'll get." And they never rang back. So, and then I went to Heidelberg, and then Heidelberg pretty much wanted to tie me up, and I didn't want to be tied up. I just wanted to go free to a club, and if I wasn't good enough, I wanted to be able to go back to Altona and play at Altona. You know, so. That was my bargaining tool. I wanted to be able to come to you for nothing and leave for nothing if I'm not good enough.
Yep.
So then they didn't agree. They said, no, we're not in, you know, we'll ring you back. And so anyway, I didn't want to go to South Melbourne because South Melbourne was the biggest club in Melbourne. And I went to South Melbourne and trialled there, and Dave McLaren was the coach, and he said to me, "Oh, listen, you know, we're interested, and how much are you going to cost?" And I said, "I'm coming for free. You don't have to pay for me." And he said, "All right, I'll sign you on the spot." You know what I mean? And that was it, you know. And and then after a year, I played my first year at South Melbourne. After a year, I was the hottest property in the league, and I was on a free transfer. I could walk out anywhere, you know, after 1 year.
And just for those who are new to football, so Davo's made the South Melbourne Team of the Century. So that's the accolade. When you go in with an open heart and an open mind into football, you can make their Team of the Century. That's absolutely brilliant. Who are your favourite teammates at South? I know you did a couple of stints there, but if you probably your first stint there was the bulk of it. If you think back to that South Melbourne era, who are your favourite teammates there?
I was a bit of a loner pretty much my whole career, you know what I mean? I didn't mix much with many of the players, but I wasn't sort of, I just kept to myself because, probably scarred as well from when I was young being Japanese and and bullied and stuff like that. So it was tough, you know, and I pretty much, you know, when you say who were your teammates and that, I pretty much stayed with the young guys and, you know, the reserves or someone who weren't playing in the team. I didn't really mix too much with any of the senior players. I was respectful. I'd say hello and say, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't go out. So I stayed on my own, you know. So, but, you know, the players were all good. Everyone, you know, it was just probably my upbringing, you know, and how I grew up that I just kept to myself because it was tough, you know.
You wanted to protect yourself.
I didn't trust anyone. Yeah, emotionally, I didn't trust anyone because, you know, I'd always been bullied, you know. So yeah, it was tough. I don't think people knew that at the time.
Yes,
because, you know, I was super confident. Super confident. I was super confident, and I would never take a back step because I was in fights all the time when I was young.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So I had to be strong mentally, but deep down I was.
Yeah, there's still that 9-year-old child in you, right?
Yeah.
Progressed into that 20-year-old, 30-year-old man. So you still got the 9-year-old child inside, but when you cross that white line pitch, then you're obviously capable of, you know, fighting.
I could step up, and I had to learn. You know, I'll be honest with you, Sash. You know, this day and age, I'm a bit. I don't understand certain things, like I don't understand mental health. Because back in my day, there was no mental health. You know what I mean? You got beaten up.
And bullied and beaten up and all that sort of stuff.
And you had to fight for yourself. And my brother and I used to fight back to back to survive.
Yes.
So we had to, it was sink or swim. It was that simple. And, you know, a lot of times we got beaten up as well. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
And I'm close to a guy that was a Greek guy that went to kindergarten with me. We're still close even to this day. You know what I mean? Because he was my best friend. But he got bullied as well for helping me. He was a lot taller than me. And we went to school, same classes and everything. And his name's Andrew Muniz. And, you know, we were close. And I went for a walk with him the other day because I'm doing an autobiography. They've asked me to do an autobiography. And I said, listen, they're going to ring you and talk to you. And I said, you know, when we went for a walk just to talk about the old days, I said, do you remember when we used to get bullied? And he goes, oh, my God. He goes, we got bullied all the time. He goes, I got my head beaten in because of you. You know what I mean? And I said, they're going to ask you about all that sort of stuff. And he said, that's no problem. He goes, I was friends with you. We were friends, but people would just come up and beat you up for nothing. They didn't even know, like they just beat you up.
Yeah.
And, you know, even when I was secondary school, you know, I remember I was there for about a week and, you know, some guy come up behind me and just hit me, you know, and just because I was Japanese, you know. So we inherited a lot of things that, you know, unfortunately after war, you know, my father was Australian, so you got to understand there's two sides to a story, and I could listen to both sides, and, you know, I can understand if you're on the wrong side of the fence, but my mum was Japanese, my father was Australian, and I listened to, and my mother was from Hiroshima, so my mother, you know, she went through the atomic bomb and watched it, and watched her parents get killed and watched all disintegrate, and she went through it and she told me all about it, you know, and then I listened to my dad and, you know, how he lost friends in war, and, you know, I used to see, my dad would never talk about the war, and a couple of times I would see him crying in the backyard, and then I'd say, oh, what's wrong, Dad? And he'd just say, oh, no, I'm all right.
Yeah.
You know, so
I'm sure when you were bullied too, it wasn't 2-on-2, you and your brother against two. It would have been like...
No, I'm talking, we were bullied by 5 guys beating us up, you know what I mean? You know, you know, it was either get bullied, get hit, and you were getting hit by 5 or 4 guys, but you were swinging at the same time to
Yep.
try to get out and run away, you know?
And I think, like, and you befriended a lot of you saying a lot of the Greek community. To me, you are the epitome of what Australia is. You know, this melting pot of multiculturalism, and I can thoroughly understand. You know, every migrant, okay, or new Australian feels what you felt. Okay, so today it's no different to new migrants, and so you know when my parents came to this country, and you know other new migrants have come for generations past, they experience a similar thing, right? So this country is now a melting pot of multiculturalism. We're talking about a time whereby any difference of a person, the way they looked or talked or religion or whatever, people want to highlight those differences, and so, but it made you a better player.
Now, like growing up now, if you're growing up now and you're an Asian, like there's Asians everywhere in Australia. You go into Melbourne, you think you're in bloody, Kuala Lumpur or Singapore or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. But back in those days, like I was the only Asian, and that it worked in one way for me because I was the only Asian in the whole western suburbs, you know what I mean? And I was the only Asian playing soccer in Melbourne, you know what I mean? So if I was good, people would recognise me, but if I was bad, people would still recognise me. I stood out, you know. So from that point of view, you know, there was a benefit maybe being Asian, but, you know, I never thought of it that way. I just thought, you know, that I think, you know, one of the biggest things that moving over to playing football or soccer back in those days was I had this passion, you know, that my mother always brainwashed us, and she was really hard on me to be the best, you know what I mean? And that was probably a Japanese, and I understand when Jason went to Japan, and I understand he went through all this as well, and it was all about the Japanese culture. And one of the things about their culture is that it was all about perfection, do you know what I mean? And I talked about once before, you know, Jason played in this game, and he scored 3 goals against a team they'd never beaten, but he went over to the coach, and the coach slapped him over the head when he got to him, you know what I mean? And then Jason was shocked. Why did he slap him over the head? And he said that was for the 2 goals you missed. Do you know what I mean? So it was a totally different mindset and totally different culture for him. But he started to understand what my mother was like with me, and she grilled us and grilled me to be the best at everything. And it was just be the best, be the best, be the best, you know. And sometimes you couldn't be the best, you know, like I had to be the best at English, be the best at maths, be the best at sport, be the best. You just can't do it. And then she would monitor it. And she was like my mother was, you know, she was the driving force for me, and she was the motivation, and she gave us the motivation. She prepared us, and you know, and I look back now and I tried to emulate some of her traits with my children too, you know what I mean, and trying them. And I always talk to Jason, especially in football, it's about being the best, you know, and if you're not the best, you've got to be the best, and that's the bar, you know, and the standards, and, you know, and consistency. So I guess we got a lot of, Jason's got a lot of, you know, it's not easy too, you know what I mean? Like I with Jason, I spent a lot of time with Jason trying to build his confidence and self-esteem, but I was also hard on him as well. You know, I remember one day ringing him in Japan and crying on the phone to him. You know what I mean? A lot of people wouldn't know this, but and I was crying to him, and I was apologising to him for being
too hard.
For being a bad father. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he turned around and said, "Dad, what's wrong?" And I said, "Listen, you know, I'm sorry, you know." And I started talking to him about, you know, how hard, and, you know, he needed that drive, but I was hard, you know. And he turned around and said, "Dad," he said, "you think you were tough?" He said, "You prepared me for Japan. They're 1,000 times tougher than you."
Yep.
You know, so that was a bit of, you know, like he turned around and put it that way, but, you know, it is what it is, you know what I mean? We try to be good parents and we try to help, but also sometimes, you know, as parents, we don't even know sometimes because no one's taught us to be parents. You
Yeah.
just follow your own parents, and you become a product of your parents. And if they're good parents, and my parents were good parents, but we went through a lot of hardships, and it was tough, and purely and simply because we had Japanese blood in us too, and we were a working class family, and it wasn't easy. I remember growing up when and we weren't allowed into shops, for instance. They would ask my mum to leave, because she was Japanese, and back in those days that was one of the normal things. People didn't realise that, but that was part of our upbringing. So
tough times. So
but anyways, but my mum was the driving force, and for me, and obviously I was the driving force for Jason, but
how did they react to your first Socceroo cap?
Who? My parents?
Yep. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I'm probably going back a bit, but I can answer this with something that I experienced and I didn't realise. And there's been a lot of tears right through the whole journey from myself to my mother to my son to my uncle, or my mother's uncles. When my mum left Japan, my mum was just quickly. My mum, she met my father during the occupation forces in Japan, and they weren't allowed to, fraternise or meet. And they did it secretly. And then anyway, my mum was beaten up by her brothers because she was going out with the enemy, and she suffered a lot. And then anyway, it came to a point where back then in Hiroshima, her uncle was the Minister of Health, and he because my mum's parents were blown up in the atomic bomb, he took over, and he turned around and said, "Listen, you're shaming the family. Do you realise you're shaming the family?" But he didn't say all this. It was a court of the family. She was like in a court, and all the family were there. Everyone bagged her, blah, 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 and criticised her and disgraced the family name and all this sort of stuff. He just sat there and never said a word. And then he turned around and said, after the whole family said everything, he just said, "Listen, can I speak to my mother in another room?" He talked to her and he said, "Do you love this man?" And he said, "Yes, I love him." And he said, "Do you realise, are you prepared to go to Australia and live with him?" And she said, "Yes, I'm prepared to go to Australia and live with him." And he said, "But do you realise you're the enemy? You realise how your family hate you so much because you're dating or going out with the enemy." He said, "You will be the same situation when you go to Australia, and when you have kids, you will be the enemy, and it will be a hard life for you." So anyway, to cut a long story short, he supported her because my mum went to work at 16 and looked after the kids and the family, and she did everything, and he had a soft spot for her. So when my grandmother died, which was his sister, he was very close to my mum. He respected her, so he said, I give you the open will and love from the family to send you off. But he said there's one condition: if you go and you live there, if things are sad and bad, you write to me, I'll bring you straight back. That's the only condition. That's the will. That's the decision. And she said, okay, and she was happy. So she came over here. And to answer your question now, when I've got to be careful I don't start crying because this is teary, When we went back to Japan, I went to Japan for my very first time. I was playing for the Socceroos, and back in those days I did an ad for a company, and they had this, they had all these sportsmen, and they put them all on posters. And Jeff Hunt was doing squash. They had all the AFL players, and they had one, I can't remember who, the boxers and everything. And I represented soccer in Melbourne. So I was on the ball. I was on this poster. So I went to Japan for the very first time to see this uncle before he passed away, and my mum presented him with this poster of me, and he started crying straight away because for him, he seen that my mum had gone to Australia and he knew what sort of life she was going to have, but she produced a Socceroo, and now the poster, it's in his house, you know, and he looked at it like, he didn't, like, you've gone over there against all the odds and you've come back and you're now showing us your son, who's a Socceroo, and he plays for the national Australian team and blah, blah, blah. And
That's
he just
brilliant.
broke down.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And you played many, many, many good games for the Socceroos. You know, I think you were man of the match 10 times. You played, you know, over 70 games. Is there a most memorable game?
I think Scotland was a big game. You know, when we played Scotland at Hampden Park, and also when we played Scotland in Melbourne, it was a great atmosphere as well. Yeah. I mentioned once before that I said, you know, we drew with Scotland in Melbourne, and what happened was after the game, I still remember it, we got a standing ovation because of our performance, even though we didn't qualify. Yeah. But Scotland was definitely a big game over in Hampden Park as well. You know what I mean? There was 80,000 people there, and it was just unbelievable. But playing with the Socceroos, you know, there's a lot of memorable moments, I guess. You know what I mean? You know, the Olympic Games, beating Yugoslavia, which is a big shock to the system, and knocking them out and going to the next round. That was a big game. Playing against Brazil in the final in the Gold Cup. Yeah, that was.
What about that game against Argentina?
Argentina beating Argentina, who are current world champions. Maradona was the only player who wasn't playing. You know, so there's a lot of highs and lows in football. But you know, there's a lot of. You know, I'm grateful to be able to have these memories of being a Socceroo, and all the memories of travelling. It was a real education for me. It helped me not only become a better player, but it also made me proud to be Australian. It made me a lot more patriotic, and you know, for me, you know, I'm Australian first, you know, and that's what a lot of people don't realise. If there was a war on, I'd go to war, and if I had to fight against Japan, well, I'm fighting for Australia.
100%. Well, we saw that every time you put on a Socceroo jersey, mate, you went to war.
Yeah, well,
you crossed that white line, and so whether they put you as sweeper or left back or right back, I mean, I remember you as a right back. So, like I said, you're in my team of all 11 right back. You got that spot, but against that game against Argentina, I think you were playing as a 6. I
was playing. I played pretty much a lot. I was pretty much a utility player when I was in the Socceroos, because when someone got injured, I would go into midfield, or I'd go to left back, or I'd go to, you know, right back, and I played a lot of games in midfield as well. I played that whole tournament in midfield because there was injuries, or, you know, they wanted me to play in there, and so, you know, I just played wherever. I was happy to play. I was happy to play, and I was grateful, and and wherever it was, I just wanted to be the best. And
tell us about your time at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, well, there was another part of the journey, you know. I look at life, and I'm starting to realise that life's a journey, you know, and there's highs and lows, and you know, I remember just getting back to that brick wall. I remember I was playing a game against, I think it was my second game for Nottingham Forest, and we were playing against Manchester United at home, and you know, I used to knock on the doors of all the kids, you know, to come out and play with me, and no one would play with me because I was the worst player in the team. And I remember where we all congregated at this house, you know, the Demetrio house. They were Greek, and the kids, I grew up with them, and the coach, my first ever coach was Fred, and played with Jim. But the father, it was interesting. What happened was I was playing, and I found this out by the sons telling me this, you know what I mean? And it came back to me. And what happened was I was playing Match of the Day. Back when I was growing up, there was the big match on TV and Match of the Day. And Match of the Day was Nottingham Forest and Manchester United. So all the kids congregated all the kids that I grew up with, they all congregated to the house and watched the game. And then the father never said much at all, never said nothing for many, many years, never said much. And this is the first time I was told, the message came back to me, is that all the kids were jealous. They said, oh, how did he get there? He was the worst player, and they were all bagging me. And they said, he's not that good, and he's shit, and blah, blah, blah. And they were saying, now look at him, he's bloody playing in England, you know, in the first division, or the Premier League of the day then, you know. And they're all bagging me, you know, and I think it was a jealousy thing, or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, the father listened to it, and he told them, he blasted all the kids and said, you know, I remember that little Chinese kid. He thought I was Chinese. And he says, I remember that little Chinese kid, and I used to watch him every day, kicking a ball against the wall. And none of you guys would play with him. None of you. It broke my heart, he said. But he said he used to play, and sometimes he'd be training out there. When it's raining, he'd still be training. And what happened was, he said, and now, he said, he's playing in England against Manchester United, and you're all bagging him. I used to think his father and his mother didn't care about him because he was in the rain kicking the ball, but he wanted to play and get better.
Yep. And
now he's playing in England. And he kicked all the kids out of the house. He said, get out of the house, all of you. You're not watching the TV. Get out. And kicked them all out. And he said, you should learn from him. We should be all proud of him because he's the one who represents it. Altona Reese, this is where we all grew up, and he's now playing in England. He said, get out of the house. And he kicked them all out. And anyway, I got back to my father. My father told me, and then I played against Greece, and Damazos was the captain of the Greek national team, and I was playing in midfield. I was a youngster playing against him, you know, and he was a huge star back in those days, you know, and what happened was after the game he swapped shirts with me because I was a youngster, you know what I mean, and you know, and he was a big name. And when I found out that the father stuck up for me, I asked my dad if he could send or take the strip over to give it to the father to say thank you.
Oh, that's so nice.
When he got the strip, he started crying in happiness, like the Muslims. He's like Maradona. He got like someone giving out Maradona's jersey to someone, and an Argentinian. You know what I mean? So I just said, listen, Dad, can you just give that strip to me? He goes, oh, you know, he goes, who do I, what? And he just went and delivered it and gave it to him just to say thank you for sticking up for Alan.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
This is a gift.
So,
yeah,
your time at Nottingham Forest wasn't probably as long as...
It was a journey. Listen, Forest was great. The only problem was there is that I had some stress fractures in my back that were, you know, that came in when I played a game, a midweek game that pretty much ended my football career there, you know. But I had some problems. I was having some problems with head injuries as well, you know, initially. And I got injured playing in... I started off. It was to go to England, you know, as a 24-year-old kid off the streets. I was super confident, you know. I was a national team player, but it was a totally new experience.
It's the next level, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking totally new experience again. You know, we're talking about these challenges. You go from Altona City to South Melbourne to national team, and then you're playing against the national team. You're playing against all the best players in the world and all that sort of stuff. Then going to today's English Premier League, and then then adjusting. You know, you're living away from home on your own and all this sort of stuff. And then I didn't know what slush was and frost and, you know, the snow, playing in that sort of stuff. like it was just an adjustment and heavy conditions, and
Yeah.
it was just a real experience. And the first 2 weeks I was there, I was having a nightmare. And thank God the boss, Brian Clough, wasn't there. He was overseas looking at another player.
Okay.
And I was terrible. I couldn't pass the ball. I was just slipping and falling, and everything was. And my mind, my mind was playing games with me. When I say my mind, my confidence, my self-esteem, my belief was all being tested, and I was feeling the pressures of being a national team player. And now I'm at Nottingham Forest, and now I've got to perform, and now I've got to do the business and be the best or whatever. And it just wasn't happening. I was just struggling with the conditions. I found the conditions, especially when I got there, found them really difficult to adjust to. But anyway, it got so bad they cancelled training on the training pitches to go to AstroTurf.
Yep.
And then when I went to AstroTurf, I remember that was the first day, my first training session on AstroTurf. Brian Clough came back that day as well, and he was at the training. He was at the training, and he turned around and said to me, he said, after the training, like he turned around and said to me, actually, my first encounter with him was getting on the bus with him, and he just turned around and he said, "Oi, who are you?" And then I said, "I'm Alan Davidson," and he goes, "From Australia," and he goes, "Oh, the Australian, okay, just get on the go, that's it, And then I was on the bus, and I was thinking to myself, the last 2 weeks were a nightmare. Now I need to perform because the gaffer's here, and I need to do some. And that session, I was fortunately that I could adjust to the AstroTurf because it wasn't slippery.
Yep.
It was easy to play with. It was quick. I was adjusting to speed as well. The game over there is a lot faster, a lot more physical. So. But I was just standing on my feet and adjusting. Mentally, I was good. Speed-wise, my awareness was quite good, but it was just staying on my feet and not slipping and all that. So anyway, I had a great training session, and straight after the training, the gaffer told me, he said, "Listen, I want you in my office straight after training." So he never went to his office that much. No one went to his office. So I went to his office, and then he said, "Listen," he said, "you're playing at Watford this week." He said, because it was a Thursday, and he turned around and seen me on a Thursday. I missed the youth game, so I trained, on Thursday, and I was playing at Watford against Watford on Saturday. So that's how quick it was. And he just turned around and said, "You're playing against John Barnes on Saturday. You're marking John Barnes. I'm letting you know." And it was that, that's how it all started, just from the AstroTurf. You know what I mean? And I played. He thought I was best on ground against Watford.
Okay.
And he mentioned that, I thought myself and Davenport, Peter Davenport, who was an English player as well, us two were given the thumbs up, so he used to give a thumbs up, and sometimes, and that particular trip, I never knew. I'm just experiencing this now. I'm on the bus, and when we were going back home on the M1 back to Nottingham, as we turned off, the bus stopped, and he made all the players walk home. They had to walk, about 5 kilometres.
Wow.
And we Peter Davenport and I were the only two players on the bus that were allowed to go. So, as these are all experiences as you're going while you're at Nottingham Forest, you're learning about Brian Clough, you're learning about how hard he was, but at the same time he was so sharp, shrewd, and for me he was always right. He was never wrong, you know what I mean? And but he was hard, and he was a fierce competitor, you know what I mean? And it was a real learning curve. And then Manchester United next week, and it was it was a journey.
Great. And you come back, obviously play over another 130 something games for Melbourne, Croatia. How was your experience there? You obviously many years.
I came back from Forest. I injured my back, and I was out
at South. You were at South for a bit.
I was at South for a short period, and then I fell out with the president there, and I didn't, you know, I was sad. I fell out with the president, and then I didn't realise, because South Melbourne, they gave me everything. I've got a lot of respect and admiration and gratefulness to South Melbourne Football Club, because they gave me the platform to be able to really experience a lot of heights in this game, you know. And but anyway, a new president, you know, we fell out because he lied to me about certain things, and anyway, so I left the club and I went to Melbourne Knights, and Melbourne Knights were great to me as well. Steve Mandikich, the president, you know, I had a lot of great memories there as well, you know. So and played a lot of games there, and Ken Warden came along at the end there, and he went to Malaysia, and he was the one who said, listen, do you want to go to Asia and play in Asia? And anyway, he told he was the national coach in Malaysia, and he was close to the king at the time, you know, and he turned around and told the king, listen, if you want to win trophies, get Alan Davidson there, you know what I mean? So I got contacted, I flew to Malaysia, and then what happened was I had to go meet the king, and he turned around and said to me, listen, he was very simple. He said, listen, I was told you'll win me trophies. If you win me trophies, I'll reward you. If you don't win me trophies, I'll sack you. It's that simple. And then we just left the room. So that was it, you know. And then, yeah, he hadn't won a trophy for 10 years that year, and he had the same team, and I was the addition. And we won the double that year, you know. We won the league, and we won the Malaysian Cup, which was a great thing for them.
Yeah, so spent a number of years there at Pahang. But I want to, there's a good friend of mine, Michael Long, wants me to ask a question. Tell us about, where did you stay? What was the accommodation?
Well, when I went there, I sort of lived in the Toorak area, sort of, you know, and it was one of the prince's houses, and it was a big house, you know, like my wife, and we had, you know, my wife's Greek too, and we went there, and Jason was just born, he was a baby, 18 months or something, and 6 bedrooms, massive, you know, and it was just too big, you know. And at the end of the year, like, we never said nothing because we had to live there, and we were grateful that we're living there, but we won the double. We've won the double, and I was man of the match, and, you know, we've won all these trophies. We won the Charity Shield. We won a, you know, fair play trophy. We won everything, you know, that year. So anyway, I got rewarded by the king, and also I asked him if it was possible, and I said at the time, at the end of the year, I said, is it possible that we could go to a smaller house? And he looked at me and he says, you're living in Toorak, you know, the best suburb with the best house, you know. And he said, where do you want to live? And I said, we just want a smaller house. That's all, just a small house, you know what I mean? We don't want such a big house, you know. And he turned around and says, oh, listen. And anyway, what happened is he got one of the generals to come in, and he said, listen, he wants to go. I said, I know a sort of house. And he goes, show him the house that you like, what sort of house. So we went to we went along the water, and there was a nice house there. We lived near the training centre and at the beach. And I said, something like this, if we could get a smaller house like this. So he just stopped the car. I didn't know this was going to happen. He stopped the car, and he's just gone out and bought the house, knocked on the door, bought the house. And then he's come out and he said, okay, you've got the house. And I said, no, I didn't mean that house, something similar. He goes, but you said this house, you want something like this. He said, I just bought it. So, and then the people came out and they were waving to me saying thank you, you know, like, he said, don't worry, they're happy, we worked out a figure, we paid the price, and this is your house. And I thought, Jesus. And then I realised I had to be really careful with what I said, because
when you play,
I didn't expect that. They bought the house, and then, you know, and then I said there was something came up. My wife, she wanted air conditioning upstairs because of the babies and all that sort of. So this was a nice little quaint house, and double story, you know, 3-4 bedrooms or something. But it was nice. It was on the beach, and, you know, backyard and all that. And then she goes, "Oh, listen, can we get an air conditioner put in, you know?" And so anyway, I went to the club and I said, "Can we get?" So we had, to cut a long story short, they actually bought in 3-phase to the street because it was only on single phase. So they bought 3-phase into the street, so they dug the whole road up, put in so they could have 3 phases to put air conditioners in every room. Do you know what I mean? And do all this sort of stuff.
I love it. So, yeah. So this is what happens when you play for the Kings team, right? So
well, you know, I think this is what happens if you're successful in the Kings team.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're not successful, you're out. You know. So I didn't, and that's all I asked, and I never asked for another thing after that. You know, and I become close to his son, who's now the current king in Malaysia now.
Yes.
And he was the crown prince, and I realised, and from that day on, I never asked for, and I got close to the prince, and he came out here as the chairman of the Asian Football Confederation when the Asian Cup was on.
Yes.
And he was the head of the the whole project of the Asian Cup, and he rang me up and he said, and I met him, and he said, "Listen." He goes, "I want you to be my personal aide everywhere I go because you know everyone and I don't know anyone, so I trust you." And our relationships from the father now to the son, and now he's the king. And I've never asked for anything ever again, but I think he respects that. Not that he's still generous and he's still, you know, he does things for me, but I just learned not to ask for anything because
you end up getting the house. Yeah, you'll end up getting the house.
I don't want to be seen, you know. Yeah.
So that's a great story. So obviously, really good time. Hank, you actually played in a Malaysian representative team with a bunch of other Aussies against Manchester United as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
How'd you guys go that day?
We played Man United. We lost. There was a couple of guest players. It was Selangor, who was Ken Warden was the coach at the time. I think Ken Warden was the coach, yeah. And we played Manchester United, and you know, I remember I've got these pictures of, you know, all the players, and we mixed up. And there was a young guy standing next to me. I've got the picture of this now, but there's a young guy standing next to me, and I knew certain players, but I wasn't, you know, like, I was just happy to play against Manchester. I was invited to play against them, and I didn't realise I was standing next to this guy who became probably a world name, you know what I mean? And afterwards, you know, we swapped shirts, but I didn't know who he was then. He was only a kid, you know what I mean? And it was David Beckham, you know what I mean? So, you know, there was a journey there where I was coming to the end of my career, and then David Beckham was just starting his career. He's just starting to get a game in the first team, you know, and he played, and that's probably the memory I have of that, you know. I played against David Beckham when he was probably in his first games with the club, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was interesting. But, yeah, it was good. We lost, I think, 3-1 or 2-1 or something like that. But Scott Olenshaw played in that game. Yeah. And scored a nice goal. And, yeah, it was, you know, it's always good to play a game. Listen, when you're a footballer, you want to play against the best, and you want to play, you know, at the highest level, and you want to play in, you know, for your national team. These are all the dreams that every kid has. And I was fortunate enough to, you know, experience the dreams, you know, that a lot of kids have. And I was no different.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. You know, a boy from the western suburbs of Melbourne, you know, having the passion to play, then going to play at the highest possible level. To me, I think you're one of the greatest Socceroos to ever play.
I never ever thought about this journey. Yeah. I just played soccer because I wanted friends, and I liked the Greeks, and that's how it started. And then from being involved with the Greek community, and also going to South Melbourne and marrying a Greek and all that sort of stuff, you know, I thank the Greek community. But I never thought about playing for Australia, you know, even getting sponsorships from Puma and them looking after me my whole career and all that sort of stuff. I never thought of that. It just came when you played, and each level you went up, you seem to get more accolades, or you seem to get more opportunities and gifts, you know what I mean? And I'm just grateful to the Greek community to allow me at an early age to play football with them, you know what I mean? And they've given me the opportunity. And then I think with the connection of my mum's drive and her drive and determination and monitoring my progress and making sure that, you can do it, you have to be the best, you've got to work hard, and that work ethic and training and hard work. I'm a believer that, I'm a believer because I was the worst player in the team. I never played a game in the first year. Mm-hmm. And in the second year, I was the best player in the team. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I trained every day against the brick wall and worked, and I just, the ball became the passion and the wall became my friend, and unknowingly, but I became a better player. And then with the mindset of my mum's drive and determination and the hardships we went through, it all galvanized into a product, and it helped me become a footballer or a professional footballer. I never thought I was going to be a professional footballer. I just wanted friends. And then this journey took me to the national team, and then I realised what it meant to play for Australia and listen to the national anthem and to wear the green and gold and travel the world. It educated me to about, going all, over Asia and Europe and South America and America. At a young age, I learned about how lucky we are in Australia and poverty. I never seen poverty, like South America or in Southeast Asia. At times it was so poor. I never knew how lucky we were. So it was a real education. It was a real, it was a challenge, but it was a vehicle and predominantly what I'm trying to say is dreams come true. Even though I didn't have any dreams, my dreams were just to have friends.
Yeah. Yes, they do. And
I
just want to revisit one story. How I believe you're a true Australian. You spent a trial period at Bayern Munich, and I just want you to touch on repeat.
What happened was I was doing well in Australia and the national team, with the national team as well, and I was starting to get interest. And what happened was a very close friend of mine had a very good connection in Bayern Munich, and his name was Bill Nardi. He was a Hungarian footballer involved, and he was quite well known in the community, but he had a Hungarian contact at Bayern. So he said, listen, I'll organise a trial for you at Bayern, because he was a fan of mine as well. And we became very close friends. To this day, we're still good friends. He lives in Queensland, So, and anyway, what happened, we went for the trial, went over there, and because I was a national team player, I was only 23, and I was getting changed in the dressing room with, like guys like, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, Jean-Marie Pfaff, Soren Lerby, Wolfgang Gremler, all international players at the highest level, captain the countries and all that sort of stuff. And I'm in the dressing room with the internationals, and I'm like a little kid, you know what I mean? And I'm looking at them. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I trained in Germany for, it would have been about, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, you know what I mean? I was in this trial, and they wanted me, you know what I mean? And they asked me to come in and
actually sign for the team. They want you to sign for the team. Yep.
Yeah, they wanted me to sign. Yeah, I was probably a little bit shorter than a month and a half, you know what I mean? I was there for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then the manager, the coach, who was Udo Laddick, was the coach. he turned around and said to me, he said, listen, you know, I want you to see the general manager. So the general manager was Uli Hoeneß, and I had to go see Uli Hoeneß, and he said, listen, we've got a contract here, we're going to sign you, you know what I mean? And I said, oh, that's fantastic. And, you know, I was shocked, you know, because at the time, Bayern Munich, and they still are, but Bayern Munich were massive. They were the European champions at the time, you know what I mean? And for me to get an opportunity to even get in that club, it was like a dream come true. It was like someone signing for Barcelona or Real Madrid today, you know what I mean? And I just couldn't wait to get out of the office to ring up my dad, you know what I mean? And I said, and basically what they said was they had two foreign quotas, Jean-Marie Pfaff and Soren Lerby, and they said, listen, we want you to come, but the problem is our quota is full, but we'll organise a German passport for you, and you become a German passport holder, and you become a German citizen, but you play for Bayern Munich for the next 3 years, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I thought, okay, you know, listen, that was my dream, and now I've gone to the highest echelon, and I couldn't wait to get out. All I was wanting to do is to tell my dad, you know what I mean? And I get out, and I rang up, as soon as I got out the office, I rang my dad, and I said, Dad, you know, it was the middle of the night over here. And he turned around and he said, what's wrong, you know? And I said, Dad, you know, Bayern, they're signing me. They want to sign me. And he goes, oh, that's fantastic. He was screaming, he was rapt, and he said to Mum, you know, he's going to get signed at Bayern. It's one of the biggest clubs and all this. And then I told him about the condition. And then all of a sudden, there was no talk on the line. He disappeared, you know. And I said, Dad, you're there. And he said to me, he goes, yeah. And he said, listen, I want you to live your dream. I want you to you've worked so hard. I want you to live your dream. I said, what's wrong? And he said, no. He goes, I don't want to talk about it. It's nothing. I want you to be happy and live your dream, you know. And then I said, no, just tell me what's wrong. And he said, I didn't know what was wrong. And he just went silent, and it's like someone put a knife through his heart, you know. And he turned around and said, you know, so many of my mates died next to me to become Australian and let Australians become free. And he said, but I don't want that to stop you. And I turned around and said to him, straight away, when I heard that, I knew straight away I'm out of here. It's finished. What happened was, you know, that was it. I didn't have to think about it. I knew straight away that it was over. You know, it made me realise I'm Australian, and I'll always be Australian. It doesn't matter, you know.
Which club comes knocking? It doesn't matter which club comes knocking. You're not going to give up.
It doesn't matter. You know, and for me, my Australian passport meant everything.
Yeah.
From that time forward.
We're going to switch gears slightly because you've coached many players. You've coached a lot of junior players. You've coached senior sides. So you've taught other people. You know, I'm a junior coach, so I want to get your ideas just very, very quickly. You did a stint in Malaysia as well.
Yeah.
Coaching.
Yeah, I've coached I've coached different places. You know what I mean? I've coached. I coached at Bulleen at the start, and then you know, and then I got out, and then I sort of had an academy where I had a lot of kids in my academy, and we went and coached and played under clubs in Northcote, and then I got back involved with South Melbourne with the women's, and we won the Premier League with them, the first Premier League. And but all the kids, when we had the junior teams, I had 5 teams. We pretty much won everything, right through all the different age groups. And yeah, then I was involved and in Malaysia as well. But things didn't work out there because there was a bit of involvement from management, you know what I mean? So I just walked away because my family wasn't there. So, but I've been involved, and, you know, I've been involved with Altona City and Altona East just recently of just helping them out and all that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it's no different from when I was playing to now in terms of the kids wanting to become footballers.
Yes. So what advice do you have to any player at any level? What is it they need to do to get the best out of themselves?
I think the first thing is that if you ask any kid anywhere at any club, you ask them one question: what's your weakness? And they'll tell you their weaknesses. They'll tell you, they'll probably, if they're a right foot, they might say their left foot's not the best. I might not be fast. I might be a bit small. I might technique or my touch. They all know. Kids aren't stupid. They know. And then the question after that is, what do you do about it? And a lot of them don't do anything about it. So when I had my academy, and when I had one of the things that I tried to introduce was I tried to firstly introduce standards and structure in terms of quality for the kids, and I tried to do a lot of games, but also in the same time, when I was talking to you about the brick wall, kids used to go home and train, and you can speak to Lou, because Lou had 2 kids in my academy, and they used to go home and do their training against the wall and monitor it against the stopwatch. So their technique and touch, all their technique and touch is at home.
Yeah.
And then when they come into club football, then we work on their football awareness and their roles in the picture and teaching them about a picture.
Yeah.
So a lot of clubs these days still work on technique and touch at training at club time. But club time for me is all about functional stuff, which is about football awareness and football thinking. And now we have to we're trying to get into the minds of the kids and start to teach them the football picture, because every time that ball moves, there's a picture, and everyone in that picture needs to see it and adjust to what they need to do and why they do things. And that's the coach's job, to teach them why they do things, and why, I was a big believer, in all my teams, any player got the ball went forward.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I was a real believer of that back in the day, when I'm talking going back, 10 years, because I was taught about getting the ball forward and scoring goals. And the other thing is, so in terms of talking to the kids, it's about, you want to climb the ladder, but and good players climb the ladder. But I've realised in my thinking is it's not the good players climb the ladder. It's not the good players in the sense of they're so good.
It's not their technical ability. It's they want to improve. They actually want to take their weakness to the next level.
I think all players want to climb the ladder, but there's a few categories involved here now. Okay, we're talking about the mind. Mm-hmm. There's confidence and self-esteem, and about hurdles. So that's one step. So confidence and self-esteem is one thing. Mm-hmm. That's a department. The next department is the passion. Mm-hmm. Do they have the passion? Because if they don't have the passion, it doesn't matter how good they're going to be.
They'll give it up. Yeah.
They'll give it up. The next compartment, because these are the 4 rules I bought into. I bought in Alan Davidson's 4 keys to success.
Okay.
And for me, I used to get sports psychologists come in to talk to all the kids in the group, and especially the parents. And it was all about the kids' minds, and how to talk to them, how to challenge them. And what it was all about was, their targets and goals, and then their confidence and self-esteem, and determination and all that. That was all getting in their mind is one section. The passion, enjoying everything and loving it, where it becomes an addiction, that's another section on its own. And then there's another section on its own again, which is hard work. Hard work encompasses technique and touch, football awareness, strength and conditioning, dietary, it's diet, food diets, recovery, all that sort of stuff. That's another section on its own again. So you can't, there's 4 sections you need to join together. Yep. But generally with kids is that, you know, I think I'm a believer. It's not the player that has the strength or because let's say you're a good technique, you've got great touch, but you haven't got great mental awareness, or you might be mentally weak, or one player's got a great passion. Paul Wade, for instance, he was a passionate player, throw his body on the line and all that sort of. Probably wasn't the most technical or whatever, but he climbed because he was passionate and he put his body on the line. Then you've got Oscar Crino, who's a very skillful player, you know, but if he had Paul Wade's aggression and everyone had what else's strength, you know, they go the next level. And what I'm trying to say here, it's not the strength that gets you to the top. It's the weaknesses that stop you from getting to the top.
Uh-huh.
Because I think to get to the top, everyone's got quality and they've got the strengths in all the departments. But it's the weaknesses that stop you getting to the next stage. And if you've got a weakness, and then it's technique and touch, or it's in your football department, or if it's a mental, or if it's a passion, or it's a hard work, you haven't been doing it, they'll stop you somewhere from getting to the top.
Got it.
Up the ladder, which is the dream. The dream is the dream.
So I'll put an exclamation mark on that, because not only did you play for the Socceroos, sir, but you've manufactured a Socceroo. Within your family. So, you know, if anybody knows what it takes to get there themselves, but also to allow the thing that they love the most, if that's their passion, to climb up to that level. So I commend you. This has been an absolute pleasure. Alan Davidson,
I just want to say one thing. There's one other area that I think is being left behind as well.
Okay.
And that other area is developing winners. You know, everything's about participation, whatever. But for me, it was always about winning. And every team I played with, every team I coached, it was all about winning. And you can develop winners, and you can everything, even at training, when you do things, everything's about winner. When I used to do our training with our kids, I was always doing things. There was drills or things, functional things, or even if it was a juggling thing, you know, the ones who won the most juggles would go have a drink, and the losers, because they're the winners, and the losers would go do 10 doggies. Do you know what I mean? Or okay. You know, or if we had a game and we had a game against each other, the winners would go have a drink and the losers would go. It's probably not a good thing from you know, everyone to, but I was creating a winning mentality, okay. And I think that winning mentality is something. If you want to be a professional sportsman, you have to have that winning mentality where you put everything on the line because you're a winner. And
that's interesting. So not everybody gets the drink, right? So
not everyone, not in that training.
Yeah, okay.
We're developing winners, and we're developing we don't. If there's a loser all the time, we've got to cover that up somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
We get him covered up where he can win something, and then he can go. But that's what we're trying to encourage in all the kids, is to win. To win the race, to win this, to win that, to win the game, to win the race, to win the juggle, to win the passing, to win whatever it is. You're a winner, you get rewarded. Losers have to run. And no one wants to run. But what we do is we balance it out, because we need to develop winning mentality. We have to start putting targets up there where people don't just go out there and play, they're going to win.
Yeah. So this is interesting. That's maybe something that sort of dropped off a little bit in coaching.
Not dropped off a little bit.
Yeah. Philosophy.
You know, everyone wants to win, but it's all about, but for me, one of the things that I pride myself on, I talk to all my boys. I've had 100 and something kids, and I see them, they're all the different ages from 30 to, my youngest ones now are probably 18. And they're all, you know, we meet up with you, and I always ask them, what was the one thing you learned from me? And they said, to be a winner.
There you go.
So that was good feedback. So it not only helps them in life, it helps them in, you know, my mum, she wanted me to be the best. Well, I'm trying to do it in the way, instead of being the best, be a winner, be the best at everything you do, but be a winner.
Can I say, there is absolutely no doubt, Alan Davidson, that in life you're a winner. And you're first class in my books. Today's been an absolute pleasure, and great shout out mention because there's a lot of people that helped you along your journey. Work colleague of mine, Lou Talevsky, who was your team manager when you were coaching at Heidelberg. So we're going to go have a lunch. How's that sound?
Oh, pleasure. We're good to catch up with Lou anyway. You know, it's you know, for me now, it's the memories of the journey and reminiscing, you know, and, you know, life's short. That's one thing. I'm getting to a stage. I'm in my 60s now, and life's short.
Yep.
So you got to live your life, and, you know, and maximise it as much as you can.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alan, for today.
All right.
As I said, it's been an honour.
My pleasure, Seth. All the best.
Cheers, mate.